What's going on?
Not much. You got a new job.
I do. Starting on Monday.
You're gonna have that sweet Monday through Friday clinic life.
And boy, does it feel good.
Yeah. We're nurses. I'm sure the two people that don't personally know us that listen to this.
I think there's a few more than two.
All right.
Hopefully, anyway.
Yeah. Sorry about taking so long to record another episode. We've both been busy and our schedules weren't aligning. Just a quick update. We're going to do this episode, then we're going to do one more episode, then we're going to sit down and kind of talk about where we want to go from here. So,
kind of flesh things out a little bit, make it slightly more professional.
Yeah, well, we want to make it sound better.
Professional sounding, anyway.
Make it sound better. I don't know if we want to be professional.
I'd love to be professional.
Yeah. So please tell your friends we don't want to work anymore.
Yes. All right, stop what you're doing because I'm about to ruin an image and a style that you're used to.
They love it when I turn up the bass. They love it when I turn up the bass.
What's up, guys? It's March?
It is.
It's March.
Halfway
It is
through.
March 12th, 2021. My name is James Dorn, and with me is the guy who is always hooked on a feeling and knows where to come and get his love, the guardian of the vital galaxy, Aaron Rohde.
What's up, everybody?
We hope that you guys are surviving the pandemic, surviving the winter.
It's almost over. Just keep with it.
Yes. I am vaccinated. I know that Aaron is too. So anyway, we got some things in store for you. So we're going to talk about a couple notable history things here in a sec. We got our reviews of Orville Peck's Pony and the Weeknd's Kissland, plus some new albums that Aaron and I are going to give to each other for the very first time. It's like our own personal Christmas.
Always look forward to that.
It is fun. It's a bit of a gamble because we're always taking a risk on picking something else out, but it's been going okay so far.
I think we're both doing pretty good.
Yeah. It's been a good experience learning some new things. For our educational segment today, we are going to talk about Record Store Day.
It's coming up.
It'll
be here before we know it.
We want to make sure that your calendars are ready. But we'll talk about that in a little bit.
Absolutely.
So what's up, Aaron? What's our notable history?
So the first thing we would like to mention today is, music is a physical media, not as much today as it has been, in years past. But Lou Ottens, who is the inventor of the cassette tape, and he later helped with the creation of CDs back in the day. He actually passed away on March 6th. He was 94 years old. He was living over at his home in the Netherlands. For us as physical collectors, is kind of a huge person who, he created the ability to do creating your own mixtapes and recording songs.
Stealing music off the radio.
Right. So, as a big moment in music history.
Yeah.
A couple moments at least.
Yeah, just think about all of those people who, some of you are probably listening, recorded mixtapes for your significant others, probably largely in the 80s and probably some of the 90s.
Or even burning CDs back in the day, too.
Yeah, without this guy, this wouldn't have been possible. Mm-hmm. Kind of a big deal, you know. So rest in peace, Lou.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that kind of brings to light. So recently I was on the Joyful Noise record label website. This is a small independent record label. I ordered Swamp Dogg's Love, Loss, and Auto-Tune, which If you're not familiar with Swamp Dogg, do yourself a favor, find him.
He's D-O-double-G like Snoop Dogg, so he is the original dog.
Correct, and he's in his 70s, and he's just making some of the funnest, most ridiculous music in the world, so I really recommend it. Well, anyway, after I ordered from them, of course, I got on their mailing list, and I got this interesting email sent. So they're a small label with some interesting things, and apparently they're doing this thing called the Gray Area Cassette Series featuring 10 artists from the Extended Joyful Noise roster. So basically they're making these premium cassette tapes that you can buy, and it's a subscription, and they send you these cassettes. Now, I'm sure there are some people who probably will actually listen to these, but my theory is that these are hand-numbered items, are probably largely just collector's items.
Yeah, I think I kind of agree with that. I mean, it's one of those things that people will buy, they'll most likely keep sealed and display them at some point.
Right, this is a collector's thing, I'm sure.
It's kind of like with some of these, picture discs and different album covers you can get on vinyl where people actually just put the record up on the wall and they frame it too.
There's a little side note, if you're just getting into collecting vinyl, picture discs typically don't have as good a sound quality on them, so those usually aren't the copies that you're going to probably want to listen to. Like Aaron was saying, they're probably more of a display piece.
They do look really, really cool.
Right, and I had bought a copy of Elton John's Yellow Brick Road when I first started collecting. I didn't know that, but very quickly learned that the quality just sound wasn't there.
Especially if you got a good needle, it kind of picks up on it.
Right. So, we were sitting down and thinking about that, and like, where's collecting going? So obviously vinyl's on a bit of a resurge where people are getting into it. Record sales are at an all-time high. They passed CDs for the first time since, I think it was 1985. Do you think that ultimately we could see this kind of a resurgence in other areas, like, Blu-rays, because a lot of people do digital downloads for movies? Like, is there a place for premium collector's items of other things that people collect?
Yes and no, I guess. I think music is one of those avenues that people are emotionally drawn to, and I think that just kind of opens up the avenue for people to collect. I can see some people who get into like VHS tapes and DVDs and all that kind of stuff. I think it's one of those things that, if people are getting into, they get into purely for the collecting of those things. They're not going to buy a VHS tape and throw it in their VCR. You and I were just talking recently about how retro video game collecting is becoming more and more of a thing too in some areas.
It is.
And a lot of those people, they'll buy the old Nintendo games to display them. They don't fire up the old systems necessarily.
Or they buy some of the re-release systems.
Right. Or if they do, they fire up an emulator on a computer or on an Xbox or something like that.
Except for probably the most purist of purists.
Right.
There are certainly those.
I think there's always those purists for these things, but I think music is more open for that kind of stuff.
Yeah, like what do you think's going to happen to video games, say, for example? Because, with the advent of like the PS5 and the Xbox One X, we're seeing more of a steer towards digital purchasing where they have cloud storage and
one of the new PlayStations actually came in a digital only version,
right,
which drives me nuts. I like to have the physical copy.
I do too.
Purely for the resale value. If you get rid of the system and you want to get rid of the games, you can't resale a digital copy of a game.
No, that's yours forever.
That kind of drives me nuts, but I think we are, in that world where as we move forward with that stuff, it's going to be more and more digital stuff.
Yeah, I think, not with records. I think records are probably going to have a lengthy life. I think this is their second life. I think they're always going to have a place, but I still think the records are climbing. Like, I think we're not at the plateau yet. I think eventually, it'll level off. And I don't think as many people are going to be collecting them. I don't foresee brand new media coming out that has better quality of sound and stuff like that. So, like the true audiophiles, I think, are always going to collect records.
Well, and I think you see some of that with the like the 20th anniversary, 30th anniversary remasters of some albums that are being released.
Special
on vinyl now.
colors.
The colors, the
Premium
different pressings.
packaging.
Yeah. So I think I'm in agreement with you where vinyl is still kind of on that climb up. And
Right.
yes, everything levels off at some point.
For video games, I don't think I've mentioned this in the past. I used to work at GameStop before getting into healthcare, and there's some pretty diehard video game collectors that I personally talk to a lot. I can't say what's going to happen to video games, but I think we are slowly progressing towards a decline in physical media for video games. Whether that turns around at some point, that I can't say. My gut feeling is probably not. I think video games are going to continue to transition towards
Which
digital.
is kind of sad because then you won't get all these cool displays.
Right.
Which,
Premium cases and stuff like that.
all this box art, different maps and such that you get with things, posters.
There are some people like if you're into video games, Limited Run makes premium physical copies of new games for like Nintendo Switch and stuff like that that are steel cases,
Right.
special art books and stuff like that. So there's people out there doing some cool things. But so rest easy. I think if you're a record collector, I don't think your precious vinyl is going anywhere anytime soon.
God, I hope not.
I too hope not as well. So, what do you want to do next? Want to talk about Record Store Day?
Let's talk about Record Store Day.
So, Aaron, Record Store Day. So, just a brief synopsis of what it is. So, every year, a lot of like the record labels put out special versions of albums, sometimes with extra content or limited colors, or they press something that hasn't been on vinyl in a very, very long time. And this is a way to celebrate the indie stores. Okay, so in the past,
Which,
go ahead.
not to cut you off, if you are getting into vinyl, please support your independent stores and the independent sellers.
I mean, if you're in a spot where Walmart and Target's the only place, or ordering online is the only place that you can get your vinyl, you do that. But if you got a local mom and pop store somewhere that's selling you records, those are the people that need your support.
James and I like to spread the wealth a little bit. We go to everybody.
And of course, as we've mentioned previously, we do buy a lot from the Second Chance Record Group off of Facebook, where there's a bunch of independent sellers on there. But those guys are great. They donate money to charities for like domestic abuse survivors, and they just have a good mission that we believe in.
Yeah, it's wonderful.
Which we may be making an appearance on one of their broadcasts in the near future.
Hopefully soon.
Yeah, we're just trying to figure out our business.
Yeah.
So Record Store Day. So this last year was my first year going to Record Store Days. So, and I met some people while we were in line, and I talked to them and I asked them, I'm like, hey, because last year Record Store Day was 3 days, and I think there was a month or two, it was over the course of the summer. They spaced them out, I think I want to say a month or two in between, over 3 days, largely due to COVID. And this is not counting Black Friday, because they also do the same thing on Black Friday. Now, I asked some guys in line what it was like in the past, and they kind of portrayed a kind of a rough scenario. So, there's sometimes only 1 or 2 copies of some of these records. So what it's like is people get there late. Like, I got there, some of the guys are always in the front of the line where I go, they get there, I think, around midnight. And this place opens up at like 6 or 7 a.m. that day. And I usually got there about 3 just because I'm like, I care, but I don't care that much. So in the past, they said that, man, it's just a mad dash, that everybody's just in there grabbing. Nobody's shoving or pushing each other, but they're squeezing in. And, eventually they said that your hands would get so heavy because you're holding so much stuff, and everybody's packed in there so tight it was physically hard to get around. So they all really liked the 3 days because it kind of spaced things out. Me, I don't want to sound like I'm real poor, and I don't want to play that up, but Record Store Day gets to be a little expensive.
Regular days at the record store can get expensive if you get a little crazy. Record Store Day especially so.
So this last year I did go to all 3 days. I had my wife go pick up something for me on Black Friday. It was a Beastie Boys record. This year they've recently announced the 2 dates, which I'm looking up, for Record Store.
One in June and one in July.
June 12th was one of them. I'm positive of that.
July 17th, I think, is what.
Yeah, we'll look it up and confirm. So it's 2 days as opposed to the 3 days, because this is a worldwide event, and they're trying to, still be somewhat safe. I was a little disappointed because I liked the extra days, because then I didn't have to spend several $100s all at once. So I would rather them do 3 days, but that's not how things are going. So Aaron came with me to the last actual record store day. So at this point, I don't believe you had a turntable, right?
I did not. So this was kind of my first, experience with the record store and all that kind of stuff. And I'm not gonna lie, I think we got there between 3:30 and 4.
Yeah, I think that's about right.
We sat in line, we kind of talked with the people around us.
Quick note, June 12th and July 17th, worldwide, same days, no matter where you're listening.
Yep. But, James kind of explained a little bit, you go in the door, go this way, things will be along the wall here. And of course, for me, I kind of tried to stay out of everybody's way.
Because you weren't buying that time.
Right. I wasn't buying. I didn't want to be that guy that just got in the way and kind of took up space.
Actually, what I wanted Aaron to fall down in the doorway, because we were kind of far up in the line, to prevent everybody from getting in behind him.
He could have just kind of stuck his foot out and tripped me, but...
Yeah, but he didn't go for that.
So this was kind of what got me hooked on records, truthfully. I was part of that generation that midnight releases for certain video games were kind of our thing, and it kind of brought me back to that, so it had a little bit of this nostalgia feel for me. He sent me the list of what was available beforehand too, and there were kind of some interesting artists on there. I know Snoop Dogg was on there for one of them. The Beastie Boys was on there. You picked up a Paul McCartney one, if I'm...
Yeah, it was a re-release of Paul McCartney's first solo album, remastered, and then it was at, I believe it was 45 speed. It was a full LP, but it was at 45 speed.
So, I mean, they send out what's going to be available and how many copies beforehand. And I haven't seen...
how many copies worldwide, you'd have to check with your regular store to know how many they're going to get.
I don't think they've released the list for this year yet, have they?
No, we got a little bit of time yet.
Okay. Yeah.
Because there's probably a lot of different labels having to release the information.
Right. And it was cool just to experience. I'm excited to be able to go this year and potentially buy something depending on what is there.
Yeah.
And there is, at our store, the exclusive company here in Appleton, there is a section of old record store day albums that have not been picked up, which I think is kind of cool to look back and see too. The prices for these albums are 2 to 3 times what you would pay for a typical album, depending on what it is too.
At the very least, a couple dollars more. Depends on the label and the artist and stuff.
So you've got to be very selective to a point, I think.
And if you pop online afterwards, sometimes there's flippers, and they're just selling them for ridiculous amounts.
The one I looked up the other day, I was just curious to see if there was a Lil Dicky album that had been released, and there was a record store day one. And the only version I could find on Discogs was one that was going for like $250. And I'm never going to pay $250 for a used album.
And if you're listening, I wouldn't either, because we can't encourage these crazy flippers. Right. We got to let them kind of lose interest in what they're doing.
Right. So just kind of keep that in mind, that there are those people who buy them and flip them.
Yeah.
Please don't be those people.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there was a few times where I was in line and I had the opportunity to grab multiple copies of something I knew was going to be rare, but I wasn't going to be like that. I mean, I want someone to come in and get something special and have a good day with themselves.
Right, and most people show up to these things with, these are the 3 that I want to get.
Yeah, all the guys that I talked to always had lists.
Right.
They had a plan, and some of them were so organized that they would, like, you go to this end, I go to this end, and then they'd grab copies for each other to maximize what they were getting. And maybe Aaron and I will do that. We'll talk about it when it gets a little closer.
I could definitely see that happening.
Right.
Yeah. And it's one of those things where you want to make sure you know what that album cover looks like before you go in there.
Yeah, and they have pictures. Record Store Day does have a website. They know the quantities and the cover albums and why this version is special and so on. There are some places too where you can purchase some of these online from independent stores that aren't price gouging, but you'll have to do some research. I can't really give you any advice on them because I've seen them, but I haven't done business with these folks, so that I don't know.
It's definitely something to experience for sure.
Right. So it's a fun day. They have a similar thing for comic books called Free Comic Book Day. So it's not a new concept, but if you're into vinyl, it's definitely worth checking out.
Collecting of anything. I mean,
Right.
There are different places and avenues and ways to get stuff.
Is there a watch day?
I'm sure there is. If there is, I need to find one. I'm sure it's in like Sweden or Switzerland.
Your
or
girlfriend definitely.
maybe New York City, something like that.
Your girlfriend would not be happy with that.
If there was a giveaway a Rolex day, I would definitely be there in a heartbeat.
All right, so sounds good. So I think what we'll probably do next is we'll move on to our reviews for our records that Aaron and I picked out for each other for our Going In Blind segment. So Aaron, would you like to go first? Do you want me to go first?
I can go first this time.
All right, so what did I pick out for you?
James picked out Orville Peck album Pony. I knew nothing about this artist.
Which was my goal.
Beforehand. And when I looked at the album cover, the first thing I compared him to in my head was Lil Nas X. Reason being is he is a newer artist who is just kind of over the top and flamboyant with everything that he does. And the only picture I saw of Orville was a red velvet cowboy hat with a black lace mask on.
With fringe.
That was it, with fringe. So that was really all I could see, and I just kind of thought this guy must be a little over the top. So when I did a little research, I found out he's a Canadian artist. Most places label him as a country artist. After listening to the album, I don't know if that's how I would label him, but I understand why they did. You have to put a label on him somewhere so you know how to categorize his music with other stuff. Lots of the music in the album definitely has country elements to it, and there's very good storytelling and things like that, but I definitely hear roots in other music as well. So when I first listened to the album, it had that country feel. It had a simplistic musical style, which I enjoy. It kind of makes you focus on the lyrics and the feeling of the music a little more.
It's not overproduced.
Right. When you hear his voice, it's very apparent he's trying to tell you something, but he kind of wants you to figure it out, is kind of the vibe that I got from it. After, listening a little bit, I could hear a little bit of folk music mixed in there. And a couple days after, I got it, I threw on a Lynyrd Skynyrd album that my dad had got me for my birthday. And I texted James, and I was like, I can hear some of this in that Orville album as well.
That's the beautiful thing about music is everybody takes influences from each other. It's really like a inclusive medium.
Right, and this was a very well-balanced mix of different musical genres as well. So as the album kind of went on, I was trying to figure out who he was talking about the whole time. Is he talking about himself or some other kid that he may have grown up with, or who was it? There's a lot of raw emotion in the lyrics, which I like. And on the third song, he kept saying, "It's all right," and talks a boy stuck or caught in something, but you never really figure out who it is that he's talking about, which is kind of cool. It leaves it open-ended to the listener, and you can kind of figure out what he's trying to get at himself. After a few slower songs to begin the album, he goes into a little more upbeat one as well, which I liked. It kind of shows you the versatility. And you could tell he's a very good storyteller with the music, and he does have some country roots. One other thing I thought was interesting was the intentional distortion of some sounds. So it had very good production work without being overproduced, which I really enjoyed. He doesn't oversaturate you with his sounds as well. So as far as me liking the album, I definitely do. Like the T-Rex album you got for me, I don't think it's something that I would have bought for myself, but I did enjoy it. I judge an album based on if I can come back and listen to it multiple times. And this is definitely one that I think I will. And every time I listen, I can probably pull something different from it as well. So for that reason, it'll be staying in the collection. One other thing I really liked about this album is I kind of, after the first few songs, I was thinking, you know, I don't know if this is something I can get into and I can enjoy.
It's
but
different.
after
It was absolutely different.
after 3-4 songs, I kind of found myself bobbing my head to the music, and I definitely got into it.
He's getting a lot of attention. He not that long ago released a new song off of his EP that he recorded with Shania Twain, actually. So he's definitely getting some proper.
You know, and the music video for that song, he's got a very interesting costume for. So him performing live would be a treat, I think.
Yeah, we talked about how we consider going to go see him live. So did you find anything out about his actual name?
So
Orville Peck is a pseudonym.
nobody officially knows who it is. There are rumors that are circulating about that he used to be a drummer for a punk band. I think,
Canadian punk band.
I think he has said, you know, I used to be a drummer in another band, and you said it was based on his tattoos and
Yeah, that's
things
side
like
by
that.
side photos of him, and I agree the tattoos look very similar.
So nobody officially knows, but there are ideas swirling about.
And the name is Daniel Pitout. I'm sure I butchered that name, as I do with all names that I say.
I'm sure it's French if he's Canadian.
Right, and then the band that he supposedly was in, if this is correct, was, I'm not going to pronounce it correctly either. It's N-U, then there's like the umlaut above the U, space N-E-N-S-A-E. So again, don't know this band at all. Just know that they're a punk band.
And it would totally make sense for this guy to come from a punk band, just with the way his lyrics are put together and the diversity of musical styles.
Yeah, he's very, very, very diverse. I would agree. So it's also worth mentioning too. He's openly gay, which is kind of an unusual thing, kind of in the country genre. We don't see that as much. When I was learning about him, I read a couple things. One, when you ask him about his mask that he wears, he really doesn't tell you what it's for. He says, I want it to be whatever people want it to be.
And you can feel that with his music too. Like, he'll tell you the story, but he's not going to tell you how to interpret anything.
Right.
He's very much, I'm going to put this media out there. You interpret it the way you want it to interpret.
And he's not clear on whether it's talking about him or talking about a boy that he knows, somebody he dated. All of it's very open.
Right.
Another interesting thing I found out when I kind of went down the rabbit hole on him was he was inspired by, at a young age, by an album called Lavender Country, who was a country music band that was formed in 1972. And this was actually the first known gay-themed album in country history. I did look it up on Discogs too. It looks like it's probably a hard album to find, but Orwell specifically cited in an article that I read about him, an interview, that this album impacted him. So if you get interested in, like, man, I want to get this landmark album, it was Lavender Country.
And I think Pony is his debut album.
Correct.
if I'm
He's
not
got that
mistaken.
and an EP out.
And it's called Show Pony, I think is the second one or something.
Yeah, and that's the one with the
along those
Shania
lines.
Twain song. Do yourself a favor, check the music video out. It's cool.
It is. It is.
All right, so we'll move on to my album. So I got the Weeknd's 2013 release called Kissland. The Weeknd, and this name is Abel McConan Tesfaye, another Canadian artist. Weeknd, if you're listening, I'm sorry I butchered your name.
We also hope you are listening, just for that fact.
You know he is. The Weeknd's a fan. So born February 16th, 1990, he is a singer-songwriter and record producer originally from Toronto, Canada. Known professionally as The Weeknd, and as Aaron pointed out in our last episode, that's Weeknd with 2 E's. Mr. Weeknd has been active since 2010. Early days of his career, he would upload songs anonymously to YouTube. In his approximately 11-year career, he's released 7 studio albums, garnering himself 3 Grammy Awards. And what did you just tell me about that?
So he has recently been kind of against the whole Hollywood and over dramatization and glorification of people in Hollywood. With the Grammys coming up this Sunday, actually, He has told his record label and the whole musical world effectively that he is not going to be allowing his stuff to be submitted for Grammy Awards anymore. And I think he's doing this as a fact that, he's won 3 or 4 in the past. And now he's kind of sticking it to them, saying, I don't want your awards anymore. I'm going to do this for me.
And there's some respect in that. There's some integrity. 2 of his Grammy Awards came in 2016. One was for Best R&B Performance for Earned It, and his second for Best Urban Contemporary Album with Beauty Behind the Madness. His most recent win, coming in 2018, again for Best Urban Contemporary Album with the release of Starboy, which was what Aaron originally played me a snippet of, and had a very disco vibe to it, from what you played for me.
I enjoy that album a lot.
All right, so some of my thoughts. So admittedly, I knew absolutely nothing about this artist going into this. I am not going to go over what makes a good album to me, since we covered that in the last review. All right, that being said, from someone who appreciates great art and aesthetics, this album impressed me from the moment Aaron put it in my hands. Not only was this album a gatefold, but it also came with a high-quality cover sleeve. It felt like I was holding a little box set. The dark colors and grain hue of all of the writing and pictures appealed to me visually. And then when I pulled the gatefold inner sleeve out of its almost futuristic, it had almost a futuristic Japanese vibe that reminded me of movies like Blade Runner. This was a double album on clear neon vinyl.
Did we ever figure out if it was glow in the dark?
I was just thinking about that. I'm going to be honest. I totally forgot to check. So it has that look like it could glow in the dark. All right. When the needle first hit the grooves on this record, I was overwhelmed. The music was extremely dark and moody. It felt raw and painful. Then when the vocals kicked in, it definitely matched the tone of the music. The Weeknd was quick to show me the range and ability of his voice. The music was decidedly modern, but make no mistake, his voice style was definitely R&B. Having grown up with bands like Styx and Pink Floyd and The Who, I'm no stranger to concept albums. To me, these albums, they have somewhat of a uniform tone from beginning to end. I would take it a step further and say this album is the R&B equivalent to a rock opera. With the same size and scope and sound, I feel like if you were to sit down and put this album on shuffle, you would lose a lot of its magic of the journey. Songs seem to flow from one to another with building and dropping down from each other. As for that reason, I would struggle to pick out standalone songs to recommend. The closest thing I would say is the album's 7th track, Wanderlust. This album is decidedly upbeat in comparison. This song is decidedly upbeat in comparison to the rest of the album. At this point, I would say it's very reminiscent of 70s and early 80s Michael Jackson, both musically and vocally. It would kind of compare it to the song Rock With You by Michael Jackson, if you're looking for something more direct. So the main question we always address at the end of these reviews, would I have bought this for myself? No, I definitely would not have. Do I like it? Yes, I do. It actually really surprised me, and I could see myself picking up the album Starboy. For that reason, The Weeknd's Kissland has found a permanent home in my collection.
I kind of knew going into it, as soon as I sent that snippet over and you said, oh, that sounds fun, I was like, well, that's what I have to get now.
Yeah.
And I'm glad you enjoyed it, too.
I did. I definitely did.
All right, should we move on to this week's albums?
Yep. Let me. I'll get you this one over here. So I am giving Aaron a copy of the Black Pumas album. This is not his record for the week, but I recently picked up the deluxe reissue of it with bonus tracks, so I no longer have a reason to have that.
Gold vinyl, right?
One record's gold and one's black with like red. And the second record is like live tracks, and it actually came with a 7-inch with 2 covers on it. One was Eleanor Rigby by the Beatles.
I'm excited for that one.
Yeah, that one I'm giving Aaron's white cream colored vinyl.
Okay, so. I dig that.
All right, so we're gonna try not to do too much of our initial impressions with these new records, since we're gonna kind of go more into depth. So for this week, I have going to be presenting Aaron with J.D. McPherson's Undivided Heart and Soul, published on New West Records, and then we have it at a 2017 release.
Okay, it's another group that I know nothing about. So I'm excited for that.
I was listening
I'm
to.
guessing it's soul music.
No,
Or no? Okay.
I'm not gonna steer you on it. I will just say, by comparison to the rest of what I've picked out from you in the past, it's more upbeat.
Okay.
Because I felt like I was kind of giving you some like dark.
The last two albums were definitely kind of dark and heavy and emotional.
Dark and heavy and emotional. So don't get me wrong. There's a serious side to this album, but musically, there's more upbeat.
I'm excited for that one.
Yeah. I and that last album I got for Aaron and this album, I would buy for myself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I got something here that I would probably buy for myself as well.
So Aaron texted me the other day and he gave me numbers 1 and 2, and he asked, because he was debating between two albums, and then he's like, "I'm gonna get you both for you." He goes, "But which one we're gonna get first?" And then I picked, and they didn't have that one.
Yeah, so that kind of didn't work out at my point. But that other one has been ordered. The store will call me when it's in, so that will be for next time.
So is this the one you said you think I would know the artist?
Yes. Well, I know you know the other artist, but this is one that I'm fairly confident you don't have in your collection yet, but I'm guessing you will know the artist.
Okay.
So I have Jack Johnson's In Between Dreams here.
I know the name.
Okay.
And I've listened to some Jack Johnson.
And I'm guessing once you hear the first couple songs, you'll kind of pick up on who it was. So it's a 2005 release on Universal Records. So here is that.
Thank you. I've definitely heard some Jack Johnson. I wouldn't say that I've listened to a lot of it. Mm-hmm. So this is definitely a good pick. But from what I remember, this was definitely something that I liked.
And kind of on the same lines, like this is a little more happy and upbeat than the Weeknd's record that you just got.
I definitely enjoyed it, but yes, it was moody. It was very moody.
Yeah, and the Weeknd is kind of known for that. When he first started performing, he would perform on basically a blank stage or a black stage with a stool in the middle for him to sit on. Now people watch his performances and there's flashing lights everywhere and crazy backup dancers, but that is not nearly what he was when he first kind of popped up on the scene.
He's a very artistic guy.
Yes, he is.
All right.
So recent pickups.
Yeah, you go first.
I kind of took a break. I got a bunch of records for my birthday a couple weeks ago. I got a live Leonard Skinner album from my dad. I got the Bohemian Rhapsody soundtrack from my mom.
So, a question about the Bohemian Rhapsody soundtrack.
Mm-hmm.
Is that re-recordings of stuff, or is that new recordings?
So it's a little bit of both. It actually has the 5 songs that they performed at Live Aid, which I think is kind of awesome. So it's got the Live Aid recordings,
which are the actual songs, not a reproduction.
Correct. Yep. It's got some revisited songs. They label it as, which I'm guessing are the movie recordings that they made, and then some are live at different concerts that they played. So like one of them on here, for example, is from Rock in Rio. One of them is from Hammersmith Odeon. It's got a couple on here that are labeled as movie mixes, so it's kind of a mix of both. Brian May and Roger Taylor produced the album.
Well, we know Brian May is definitely. I believe Roger Taylor is. I think Roger Taylor is their drummer.
I believe so.
Yeah.
Because Brian is the
lead guitarist.
He's the guitar. Yeah. So it's a little bit of both, which I'm excited for. I love Queen. This is a very good movie too. So we got a lot of good stuff on there. What else did I get? Melissa got me an Eminem album, a Rascal Flatts album, and then the Greatest Showman soundtrack, which is another favorite movie of mine.
Famous band do that soundtrack?
They actually re-released the soundtrack where like Panic at the Disco does a few songs. Pink is in a couple songs on the album. It's kind of a compilation of various artists.
I watched that movie. That was a great soundtrack.
Yes, very good. Hugh Jackman is a very good singer,
And
as is Zac Efron.
And a very tall man.
Yes, he is. What else did I get? We just had auction night, a few auction nights in a row.
What did I give you for your birthday?
Where, you got an Edward Sharpe album as well.
Here is the name of the album.
It's a very good album. We listened to it together about a week and a half ago. It was very good. So from the auctions, I have 2 Ziggy Marley albums coming, a Randy Travis album coming, a 3rd reggae album that I admittedly don't know the artist, but Armando played some of it and I was digging it, so I threw my name in there for.
And you got impulsive and just ordered.
Yeah, and then a Metallica album coming as well.
Oh yeah, Justice for All, isn't it?
Yep.
That's on my to-buy list.
And then I just went to the store foolishly yesterday. Told myself I was only going to get the records for James.
That didn't happen.
I ended up coming back with a Bruno Mars album, Maroon's 5's Songs About Jade, which...
Their best album.
Yes, very good album. And then a Chance the Rapper self-released album as well.
Which is one of Aaron's favorite.
On purple see-through vinyl as well.
That's sexy.
It's very, very good looking. It's called 10 Day. Check it out. It's his first mixtape that he released.
All right. So, recent purchases. This is not counting the Chelsea, if you're listening, earmuffs. The 12 records.
You might as well just stop right now, Chelsea.
The 12 records that I have coming this week from the Second Chance vinyl group. So, as I mentioned earlier, I recently purchased Swamp Dogg's Love, Loss, and Auto-Tune. I've been into listening to the Rolling Stones podcast, and they did a retrospective on their best albums of 2020, one of which was HAIM, H-A-I-M, Women in Music Part 3. Another one of those albums that I'd really have a hard time kind of throwing into a label of a group. It's just great. Just do yourself a favor and check it out. It is quite good. Aaron mentioned in our previous podcast that him and I both ordered a copy of Foo Fighters, their debut album. I got that in. So now I have
that out the other day, by the way. That was a very good
It was.
buy.
I still think pound for pound, I still think Colored Shapes their best album to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love Everlong. I got Edward Sharpe and the Magnetic Zeros here. The Black Pumas re-release with all the extra stuff that we talked about. Then because Aaron got a special copy, I got the original version of NWA's Straight Outta Compton, which I did listen to, and I liked that a lot, actually.
That's one of those albums that you throw on, and it's better than what you thought it was from start to finish.
I got Dick Smith's Initial Thrust, as Armando, our record guy, referred to that as baby-making music. And that's exactly what you think it would be when you listen to it. The Commodore's Machine Gun was a re-release. James Brown's Jam 1980s, which was quite good. And then what else did I get? I got Blaze Foley's Dog Years off Fat Bossum Records. That's kind of a, I don't know how to put this, kind of a salty, dirty kind of country. I'd check it out. The Guess Who from B.B. King, great B.B. King album. I got Finally by T.J. Shepherd, kind of an obscure one I got. It was sealed from 1982. It was horribly warped, so I haven't got a chance to listen to that yet. I got Mr. Wizard by R.L. Burnside. Keats, The Family was the album. Interestingly enough, it's got a Prince cover on it, which I would put that album is purely a very heavily Prince influence.
Yeah.
The Foo Fighters' Medicine at Midnight, which is their new album, and I got that on blue vinyl. And I got a really sweet deal on James Taylor's American Standard, which is his new release. It was at Target for clearance for $7.48, which is largely a cover album.
So that it sounds like, he paid an arm and a leg for these things, but most of these albums are like $7, $8, $9 a piece when we buy off the auctions. So it's not like we're spending $20, $30 per record.
I divide them up, and I figure out what I paid per record, and generally it's almost always below $15,
right.
like 12 or 13 at most.
Right.
Other things I got to look forward to, I got some Sturgill Simpson, some Neil Diamond coming soon, one of Andy Gibbs' solo albums, some Bob Dylan. He had an auction for some new sealed things. So I got the same Kingfish album Aaron got.
Which is great. I spun that the other day, and it's beautiful.
I got a really good deal on this soul singer that I'd never heard of, Betty Smith. I got a Billie Holiday album coming, which I'm going to keep this short. If you get a chance to watch the Billie Holiday movie that's on Hulu, it was quite impactful. I learned just a lot of interesting things about her. Some of the high points being that she was what would eventually become one of the first openly bisexual artists in the country, and this was in the 1940s. And that was huge. Mm-hmm. She rose to popularity from largely singing a song called "Strange Fruit," which had to do with lynching people, which the government, I won't spoil it for you, but the government at the time didn't really take a shine to.
Yeah, there's a lot of dark stories behind some of this music, that's for sure.
All right. So I'm going to bust out a couple quick on this day history notes, and then we'll kind of wrap things up. So again, March 12th, 1963, the Beatles played the Grand Cinema in Bedford. John Lennon was suffering from a cold, so they had to kind of mix things up and actually had George sing John's parts. 1968, the Rolling Stones started recording their next single, Jumpin' Jack Flash. The Temptations in 1969 became the first Motown recording act to win a Grammy. On that same day, Paul McCartney married Linda Eastman. 1975, ABBA recorded Mamma Mia. 1983, Bonnie Tyler scored her only #1 hit on the UK chart with Total Eclipse of the Heart. 1988, Rick Astley started his 2-week run at #1 with Never Gonna Give You Up.
What is that, only there for 2 weeks?
2 weeks.
Man.
That's not counting the 6 months it was popular recently.
Right.
So just a reminder, if you want to communicate with us, you can check us out on One More Record Podcast on Twitter. You can also get us at One More Record Podcast on gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you. We'd love to hear what you think we're doing well, what we suck at. Just be nice.
Yeah, please.
We're sensitive boys.
We are kind of at the beginning stages of digging into getting sweatshirts and things made too. So if anybody is interested, I know it might be a long shot right now, but
yeah,
down the road, that's something that we may dig into as well.
Right. We'd love to have conversations with you. We'd love to know what you're listening to.
Any suggestions?
Any advice that you have for someone that's new getting into collecting? Whatever you want to talk about.
Yeah, we're all ears, that's for sure.
That's for sure. So thank you for sticking with us. Like I said, just remember we're going to do this episode. We'll do one more episode after this, and we're going to kind of sit down and talk about restructuring the podcast and what we can do to make better quality. If for some reason you're listening and you want to sponsor us, we definitely would be willing to talk to you about that.
Or if you want to be a guest on the show too, we'd be open to that as well.
Right. Yep, we could do. We'd be able to do like a Zoom video or whatever you want to do to kind of chat.
For sure.
So.
All right. Have a good one, everybody.
You have a good one.
Remember, there's always more vinyl.
There's always more vinyl.